Hey, what's up? This is Gabriel, and welcome to another video of a scuba diving accidents analysis. This one is going to be pretty interesting because this one comes with a personal story. This is the missing diver, or I mean, by now we can tell this is a dead diver, Danielle Gibbons. She was 27 years old, and the reason why this is a personal story is because she was actually certified one of her courses in the dive center where I was working. Now, I personally never met Danielle. I know she did the open water with us just before I became an instructor. So this is going to be a pretty interesting story because it includes a little bit of a controversy about exactly what happened, and I'm going to give you my point of view based on the fact that I have dived in that area. Number one, and number two, well, I mean, kind of like the theories what people have mentioned. So the first thing to understand is um, this is Danielle here. She was a young girl from the area of Biga in the south coast of New South Wales, and she was diving in Fiji. Now, technically, she was a babysitter of an instructor and his family. Okay, the name his instructor was called Dan Grenier, and he was the owner of a dive lodge on the island. And she was technically doing her like dive master training course. She was actually working with Dan at the same time. So, I mean, two of them of these two factors are very important based on all these conspiracy theories. Now, Dan was the owner of the dive lodge, so he technically knew a lot what he was doing, and mainly he was actually an expert in diving in this area. That is the area where his dive center, his dive lodge was. Now, this area, if you've never dived here, is extremely deep. There's some currents. It's a beautiful area to dive, but it's actually can be a little bit, complex. Okay, now they were the island that they were actually diving was the island of Nanana Ira. Okay, and one of the things you have to keep in mind when you're diving in Fiji is that the Fijian government support in case of diving emergencies is actually very, very limited. Okay, so the theory here, what happens when they went diving is that in theory they went actually diving on a boat. Okay, and when they went diving on a boat, the initial theory, okay, was that they became separate from the group during a boat dive, and they have never been they haven't been seen since since then. Okay, so they disappear. So the family tried to organize this rescue operation. I mean, to try to proceed to try to find them. But obviously, you have to keep in mind not only this is in a remote area of Fiji itself, but technically organizing things is going to be extremely difficult. So that is the core story of what happened. Now, one of the things that happened with this story is that many of these dive sites, like this area, this kind of deep dive, what the problem with these kind of dive sites is extremely difficult to determine depth or where people have been diving because it's almost like a volcanic dive site. So you can start at 10 meters, but down there it can be easily, 50, 60, 70, 80 meters. Now, in the rescue operation here, the little rescue operation that was done, because keep in mind, these were Fijian, rescue, organizations, not Australian or American. One of the things that happened is that there was not a lot, okay, of findings. Now, the only thing they found was a BCD. Okay, now this BCD was found on September the 12th, and it was washed up in another island almost 115 miles from the dive site. So this little factor of a BCD appearing by itself is what has created all this controversy about why this happened. Now, this BCD weren't literally, the tank it wasn't ripped from the tank. It was almost like the BCD was out of the tank. Now, one of the comments here says it has been very difficult because we've been trying as hard as we can to conduct the most serious search operation for Danielle, and when facts get distorted, then it's very difficult for us because I don't want any weight taken away from the seriousness of the situation. So all this controversy, they created a website called missingdivers.com. The site obviously doesn't exist. It's a very long time ago. And in this case, you can actually Google it and you can find information when you put Dan Grenier Scuba. But in this case with Danielle, the controversy or the conspiracy theory was that they didn't disappear. They actually planned this because there was a romance between her as a babysitter and him as an instructor. That makes no sense. I mean, he had kids. It had been kind of ridiculous for him to technically, okay, to do that, okay. Obviously, this was a dive site with very strong currents, okay, and it was well known to have downdrafts, okay. So that was, the problem. So in many cases, because they had low fuel the boat, they trying to do a bit of search for them, but what they didn't find, and they went back, obviously, to a resort to try to put fuel. Now the next day, local boats, private planes, and helicopters searched unsuccessfully, and nothing happened. Now, they found the BCD 12 days later, okay? Now, what I read here is BCD regulator tank and wetsuit were found by villagers. So my apologies. So they actually found more stuff, okay? They found literally BCD regulator tanks and wetsuit were found about 70 miles from where they were last seen. But here's the catch. There was no evidence of any shark attack. So in case that you ask, what's the evidence of a shark attack? Well, it's pretty basic, right? If your BCD has marks of bites, if your wetsuit is ripped apart, you could actually tell very easily if an animal attacked something, but there was nothing, okay? And this is actually, it's a little bit like a remnants of the movie Open Water, okay? Where some people claim these missing divers, fake their disappearance. But even, the Fijian police said crazy shit. Like, obviously, these two may have eloped to get out of the country. It's completely, insane the amount of stuff that were actually done, okay? And in many cases, they even hire like a psychic to try to find information. And the psychic believed that, they're alive, they're living in a different place. So all these, because they found the gear in like almost like perfect condition, became all this conspiracy theory about what happened with the divers. Obviously, they have never been found. The dive gear of Danielle was actually found, but the dive gear, I don't think his dive gear was actually ever found. And that is the vanishment of these divers. Very unusual, because I actually met the mom of Danielle. She came to a dive center once, and she was just literally talking to me. And then I discovered that her daughter had disappeared. And then I went to the classroom and I actually started looking at the records. And yeah, effectively, this was Danielle. She was a young diver, and that was the way she actually disappeared. So if you ask me what could have happened, based on my experience, there's a few things that are important to understand. Number one is I can't understand how dive gear can appear like that. So it's very unusual that dive gear will have ended up in that level with BCD out and tank and especially the wetsuit is the very unusual part. I don't understand how a diver in any kind of condition will have literally removed their wetsuit. And even if you were trying to disappear, I think the last thing you will do is, provide like evidence like that. So it's very, very strange that actually happened. Now, the other thing that's actually very strange that this happened is that why would you disappear in the first place? You can always elope, you can always announce to the world you're in love with each other. This seems to me very complex to do it, especially by hiding from a dive boat. A dive boat could stay on the surface for 2 hours looking for someone. You don't have 2 hours of air. So obviously this was an accident, but obviously the mystery of technically why the dive gear was there. The body was never found. Look, this is such a deep dive site that I understand that completely. They're well-known sharks there. I mean, you have like bull sharks and tiger sharks in areas like Biga Lagoon and stuff like that. So that's not unusual that sharks may have been involved. But the fact that the wetsuit had no marks, that makes it very unusual. So anyway, this is my very weird review of this very strange accident where two divers, very well experienced, and then babysitter plus dive trainee disappearing in Fiji. Very strange and very sad at the same time. So yeah, if you have any comments about this, let me know. And if you have heard different theories, I would love to hear. Thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed the video, subscribe and like, and let me know what I miss. I will see you guys very soon.